My parents threatened to disown me if I didn't use my savings to pay for my brother's rehab, so I got a restraining order against them. I, 22M, am currently in my final year of college majoring in computer science. I've always been the responsible one in my family, working hard to maintain good grades and even securing a partial scholarship. My relationship with my parents has been strained for as long as I can remember, mainly because I've never quite fit into their idea of the perfect son. Growing up, our house was always filled with tension. My dad, Norman, 52M, is a high school teacher who always dreamed of being a successful businessman. He projects those unfulfilled ambitions onto his children, especially my older brother, Matthew, 28M. My mom, Linda, 50F, is a nurse who works long hours and tends to avoid conflict, often siding with my dad to keep the peace. Matthew has been the golden child for as long as I can remember. He's charming, outgoing, and has always known how to manipulate our parents. Despite dropping out of college after 2 years and bouncing between dead-end jobs, they've always made excuses for him and bailed him out of every mess he's created. I still remember the day Matthew dropped out of college. He came home unexpectedly in the middle of the semester, claiming that college wasn't for him and that he had a big opportunity in sales. My parents were initially upset, but within a week, they were praising his entrepreneurial spirit and talking about how college isn't for everyone. Meanwhile, I was in my junior year of high school, and the pressure on me to excel academically intensified. Over the years, Matthew's big opportunities came and went. There was the multi-level marketing scheme that left him $5,000 in debt. Then the startup idea that never got past the planning stage. Each time, my parents would bail him out or make excuses. He's just finding his path, they'd say. Or, at least he's trying new things. In contrast, I've worked part-time jobs since high school. I started as a cashier at a local grocery store, then moved on to tutoring younger students in math and science. Every summer, I'd take on extra hours or find internships related to my field. It wasn't easy balancing work and school, but I managed to save up $25,000 for my post-graduation plans. This money means everything to me. It's my ticket to a future where I'm not dependent on anyone. My parents know about this savings, and I've always suspected they saw it as a potential resource to exploit for Matthew's benefit. There have been hints over the years. Comments about how I'm so good with money and how it's important to help family. I brushed these off, never thinking they'd actually expect me to hand over my hard-earned savings. Last week, my parents sat me down for a family meeting in our living room. The same living room where we've had countless arguments about Matthew's behavior, where I've sat through lectures about supporting your brother and being a team player. I should have known something was up when I saw the serious looks on their faces. They informed me that Matthew had finally agreed to go to rehab for his drug addiction. This wasn't entirely surprising. Matthew's drug use had been open secret in the family for years. It started with marijuana in high school, escalated to party drugs in college, and had recently spiraled into harder substances. I was initially relieved, thinking he was finally getting the help he needed. But then came the kicker: they expected me to pay for it. The rehab program they'd chosen cost $30,000, and they wanted my entire savings plus an additional $5,000 I'd have to come up with somehow. They had brochures spread out on the coffee table, talking about the facility's high success rate and how it was the best chance for Matthew to turn his life around. I was shocked. When I refused, my dad got angry, his face turning red like it always does when he's upset. He started pacing the room, gesticulating wildly as he talked about family loyalty and responsibility. My mom started crying, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue as she pleaded with me to be a good brother. They accused me of being selfish and not caring about family. My dad even threatened to cut me off completely if I didn't agree, saying I'd no longer be welcome in their home. They said Matthew's future was more important than my little savings and that I could always make more money later. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I told them that I'd worked hard for that money and had plans for my future too. I wanted to use it for a deposit on an apartment in the city where I'm hoping to work after graduation, and to have a financial cushion as I start my career. My mom then pulled the family comes first card, while my dad implied that if anything happened to Matthew because he couldn't go to rehab, it would be my fault. The manipulation was intense. I felt cornered and overwhelmed, memories of similar situations from my childhood flooding back. Times when I was made to give up things for Matthew, whether it was a toy he wanted or attention from our parents. But this was different. This was my future they were asking me to sacrifice. I asked them why they couldn't pay for it themselves, and they said they'd already spent too much on Matthew's previous attempts at getting clean. Apparently, there had been outpatient programs and counseling sessions that I hadn't even known about. They also mentioned that they'd taken out a second mortgage on the house to cover some of Matthew's debts I later found out were a mix of unpaid rent, maxed out credit cards, and money owed to some questionable individuals. I stood my ground and refused. My parents were furious. My dad's face turned an even deeper shade of red, and he slammed his hand on the coffee table, causing the rehab brochures to scatter across the floor. My mom's quiet sniffling turned into full-blown sobs. They told me I had a week to come to my senses, or I'd no longer be welcome in their home. I left the house that night, unable to stand the tension and disappointment radiating from my parents. I've been staying with my best friend, Chris, 22M, since then, trying to figure out my next move. Chris has been incredibly supportive, letting me crash on his couch and listening to me vent about the situation. I feel guilty for not helping Matthew. Despite everything, he's still my brother, and I don't want to see him destroy his life with drugs. But at the same time, I'm angry that my parents expect me to sacrifice everything I've worked for. They've enabled his behavior for years, always finding excuses for his failures and bailing him out of every bad situation. And now they want me to clean up the mess they've helped create. I'm torn between standing my ground and giving in to keep the peace. I don't want to lose my family, but I also don't want to give up my hard-earned savings and future plans. The thought of going back to square one financially, especially in this economy, terrifies me. But the thought of being cut off from my family, despite our issues, is equally daunting. I've tried talking to a few friends about this, but it's hard for them to understand the complexity of the situation. Some think I should help because it's family, while others are outraged on my behalf. None of their advice feels quite right for my situation. I'm also worried about what will happen to Matthew if he doesn't get help. But is it really my responsibility to sacrifice my future for his? Haven't I already sacrificed enough over the years, always taking a backseat to Matthew's needs and dramas? As the deadline my parents gave me approaches, I find myself losing sleep, constantly turning the situation over in my mind. Am I wrong for refusing to pay for Matthew's rehab? Am I being selfish, or am I finally standing up for myself? How do I navigate this without completely destroying my relationship with my family? Any advice would be appreciated because right now, I feel completely lost. Update 1, it's been about 2 months since my last post, and a lot has happened. I want to thank everyone for their support and advice. It really helped me navigate through some tough decisions. After I refused to pay for Matthew's rehab, things got pretty intense. My parents alternated between guilt-tripping and threatening me. They would call multiple times a day, leaving voicemails that ranged from tearful pleas to angry tirades. My mom would text me Bible verses about the importance of family and forgiveness. My dad, on the other hand, sent lengthy emails detailing all the ways I was disappointing the family and throwing away my brother's last chance at recovery. The situation escalated when they showed up at my college campus. I was leaving the computer science building after a late-night study session when I saw them waiting by my car. My mom was crying, and my dad looked furious. They tried to corner me, causing a scene that was both embarrassing and frightening. I had to involve campus security to escort them off the premises. The incident left me shaken and even more resolved to maintain my boundaries. Matthew, on the other hand, started calling and texting me nonstop. Sometimes he'd beg for help, claiming he was ready to change and that I was his only hope. Other times, he'd curse me out for abandoning him and the family. The mood swings were dramatic and unpredictable. One particularly disturbing message from Matthew said, "If anything happens to me, it's on you." It was emotionally draining, to say the least. About 3 weeks after my initial post, I received a call from my Aunt Lisa, 46F, my mom's younger sister. She wanted to meet up and talk. I was hesitant at first, worried that my parents had put her up to it, but I agreed to meet her in a public place, a small cafe near my college. To my surprise, Aunt Lisa was actually on my side. Over coffee, she revealed some family history I wasn't aware of. Apparently, my parents had done something similar to my cousin Jack, 31M, years ago. When Jack was struggling financially after losing his job during the 2008 recession, my parents pressured him to sell his car to help Matthew pay off some gambling debts. Jack refused and has been distant from the family ever since. Aunt Lisa shared more details about that incident. Jack had lost his job at a bank and was having trouble finding new employment. He was relying on his car for job interviews and gig work to make ends meet. Meanwhile, Matthew, who was 20 at the time, had racked up significant debts through online poker. My parents, afraid that Matthew might get into trouble with loan sharks, pressured Jack to sell his car, which was worth about $15,000 at the time, to cover Matthew's debts. When Jack refused, my parents accused him of being selfish and not caring about family. They even went as far as to tell other family members that Jack was refusing to help Matthew in his time of need, conveniently leaving out the part about the gambling debts. This led to Jack being ostracized from many family events. This information made me realize that my parents' behavior was part of a long-standing pattern. It wasn't just about me or even Matthew, it was a dysfunctional family dynamic that had been hurting people for years. It strengthened my resolve to stand my ground. Aunt Lisa also told me that she regretted not standing up for Jack more at the time. She encouraged me to stay strong and offered her support, even saying I could stay with her if things got worse with my parents. Unfortunately, things did take a turn for the worse. Last week, I found out that someone had tried to access my bank account. I received an alert from my bank about suspicious activity. Someone had tried to transfer a large sum of money but was blocked due to incorrect security answers. The bank flagged it and blocked it. I immediately suspected my parents or Matthew. I spent hours on the phone with the bank, going through recent transactions and setting up additional security measures. Then, I filed a police report. The officer I spoke to was sympathetic but warned me that these cases can be complicated when they involve family members. I also started the process of freezing my credit. It was a hassle, involving calls to multiple credit bureaus and filling out several forms, but I knew it was necessary to protect myself financially. Feeling overwhelmed by the legal implications, I reached out to a lawyer to discuss my options. The consultation wasn't cheap, but it was worth it for the peace of mind. The lawyer advised me to consider getting a restraining order, given the escalating situation with the campus incident and now the attempted financial fraud. The day after I spoke with the lawyer, I received a tearful call from my mom. She admitted that Matthew had stolen my bank information from their house. I had stupidly left some old statements there when I moved out for college and tried to transfer money to himself. She begged me not to press charges, saying it would ruin Matthew's life. She tried to downplay it, saying Matthew was desperate and not thinking clearly because of his addiction. I was furious. This crossed a line I couldn't ignore. The betrayal stung deep, not just Matthew's actions, but my parents' continued defense of him. I told my mom that I would be pursuing legal action and that I wanted no further contact with any of them. The call ended with her crying and me feeling a mix of anger, sadness, and oddly, relief at finally taking a stand. Since then, I've officially filed for a restraining order against Matthew. The process has been stressful, involving multiple trips to the courthouse and reliving the details of the situation for legal documents. I'm also in the process of legally changing my name and getting a new social security number to protect myself from future attempts at financial fraud. It's a lengthy and bureaucratic process, but I know it's necessary for my long-term security. The hardest part has been dealing with the emotional fallout. Some extended family members have sided with my parents, calling me heartless for not helping my brother. I've received nasty messages on social media and even a few voicemails from distant relatives I barely know, all criticizing my choices. Others, like Aunt Lisa, have been supportive, reminding me that I'm doing the right thing by protecting myself. I've started seeing a counselor at my college to help me process everything. It's been helpful to have a neutral party to talk to, someone who can offer strategies for dealing with the stress and guilt. It's been challenging to unpack years of family dysfunction, but I know it's an important step in my personal growth. For now, I'm focused on finishing my degree and securing a job for after graduation. I've been throwing myself into my studies, partly as a distraction and partly because I know my education is my ticket to a better future. I'm also looking into affordable housing options, as I can't stay with my friend Chris indefinitely. It's daunting to think about starting my adult life without the safety net of family, but I'm trying to stay positive. This whole situation has been a harsh lesson in setting boundaries and standing up for myself. It's not easy, and there are days when I second-guess my decisions. But deep down, I know it's necessary for my own well-being and future. I'm learning that sometimes, the healthiest thing you can do for yourself is to step away from toxic situations, even when those situations involve family. Update 2: It's been about 4 months since my last update, and I wanted to share some significant developments in my situation. First, the restraining order against Matthew was granted. The court hearing was intense. I had to testify about the history of Matthew's behavior, including the recent attempt to access my bank account. The judge was particularly concerned about the attempted financial fraud. Matthew was there too, looking worse than I'd ever seen him, gaunt, fidgety, with dark circles under his eyes. Our parents were in the gallery, my mom crying silently while my dad stared straight ahead with a clenched jaw. When the judge announced her decision, I felt a mix of relief and sadness. This legal protection has given me some peace of mind, although it's been difficult to accept that I needed this measure against my own brother. My parents, unsurprisingly, didn't take this well. They've been telling family members that I'm exaggerating the situation and that I'm tearing the family apart. According to Aunt Lisa, they're painting me as an ungrateful son who's abandoning his family in their time of need. Some relatives have bought into this narrative, and I've had to block several of them on social media due to harassing messages. It's been painful to see how quickly some family members turned on me, people who I thought would understand or at least hear me out. About a call from my cousin Jack. Remember, he's the one who had a similar experience with our family years ago. We had a long conversation where he shared more details about his own ordeal and how he managed to build a life for himself away from the family drama. Jack told me about the depression he fell into after the incident with his car and how he struggled to trust people for years afterward. But he also shared how he eventually found a new job, made new friends, and even met his now wife. It was incredibly reassuring to talk to someone who truly understood what I was going through and had come out stronger on the other side. Jack also gave me some disturbing news. Apparently, Matthew had been arrested for drug possession and attempted robbery. My parents were trying to keep it quiet, but Jack found out through a mutual friend who works at the local courthouse. According to Jack's friend, Matthew was caught trying to steal prescription drugs from a small pharmacy. He's now facing serious charges, and my parents are scrambling to find money for his legal fees and another attempt at rehab. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel a twinge of guilt when I heard this. Part of me wondered if things would have been different if I'd given them the money for rehab months ago. But Jack reminded me that this was the consequence of Matthew's actions and my parents' enabling behavior, not my refusal to give up my savings. He reassured me that I made the right choice in protecting myself and my future. On a more positive note, I've managed to secure a job that will start right after graduation. It's an entry-level software developer position at a mid-sized tech company in the city. It's not my dream job, but it's in my field and offers good benefits, including health insurance. This means I'll be fully independent once I graduate. The hiring process was stressful, with multiple rounds of interviews and a coding test, but I'm proud that I managed to focus on my future despite all the family drama. I've also found an affordable apartment near my new workplace. It's a small studio in an older building, but it's mine, and more importantly, it's far away from my family's drama. I've been slowly accumulating furniture and household items, mostly secondhand stuff from thrift stores and online marketplaces. It's not much, but it feels good to be building something for myself. The college counselor I've been seeing has been a great help in processing all of this. She's helped me work through my feelings of guilt and reinforced that I'm making healthy decisions for myself. We've been discussing strategies for maintaining boundaries and dealing with the ongoing stress of the situation. It's a slow process, but I feel like I'm making progress. Last week, I received a letter from my parents. The handwriting was my mom's, but it was signed from both of them. They apologized for their behavior and said they realize now that they were wrong to pressure me. They wrote about how Matthew's arrest was a wake-up call for them and that they're starting to see how their actions have enabled his behavior over the years. They asked if we could meet to talk things over, saying they want to make amends. I'm conflicted about this. Part of me wants to believe they've changed, that we could rebuild our relationship on healthier terms. But a bigger part is wary of getting pulled back into their dysfunction. I've been hurt too many times, and I'm afraid of letting my guard down only to be disappointed again. For now, I've decided not to respond to their letter. I need more time to think about what, if any, relationship I want with them moving forward. I've discussed it with my counselor, and she agrees that taking time to process my feelings before making a decision is a good idea. As I approach graduation, I'm filled with a mix of emotions, pride in what I've accomplished, sadness for the family relationships I've lost, and hope for the future I'm building for myself. It's not the path I expected to take, but I'm determined to make the most of it. I'm learning that family isn't just about blood relations, but about the people who support and respect you. I'm grateful for the friends who've stood by me through this ordeal, for Aunt Lisa's unwavering support, and for Jack's guidance. They've become my chosen family, and their support means more than I can express. As I prepare to start this new chapter of my life, I'm trying to focus on the possibilities ahead rather than the pain of the past. It's not always easy, but I'm taking it one day at a time. Update 3. It's been 6 months since my last update, and a year since this whole ordeal began. I've graduated college and started my new job. Living independently has been challenging but rewarding. There's something empowering about paying my own bills and making decisions without having to consider my family's drama. About 2 months ago, I finally agreed to meet with my parents. We met in a public place, a quiet cafe in a neutral part of town, and I brought a friend for support. The conversation was tense and emotional. They looked older somehow, worn down by the events of the past year. They apologized again for their actions and said they've realized the harm they've caused by enabling Matthew for so long. They informed me that Matthew is currently in a court-mandated rehab program as part of a plea deal for his arrest. Apparently, he's been there for about 3 months and is showing some signs of progress. They've also started attending support groups for families of addicts. My mom talked about how eye-opening it's been to hear stories from other parents and realize the patterns in their own behavior. While I'm glad they're taking steps to address the real issues, I'm still cautious about fully reconnecting. The wounds are still fresh, and trust is a thing. We've agreed to take things slow. We're starting with occasional phone calls and might progress to short visits if things go well. I've made it clear that I won't discuss finances or Matthew's situation for now. They seem to understand and respect these boundaries, which is a positive sign. Speaking of Matthew, he sent me a letter from rehab about a month ago. His handwriting was shaky, but the words seemed sincere. He apologized for his past behavior and the attempted theft. He acknowledged that he has a lot of work to do to rebuild trust, not just with me but with everyone he's hurt. He wrote about the programs he's participating in and how he's starting to understand the impact of his actions. I appreciated the gesture, but I'm not ready to respond yet. I need more time to process my feelings and decide if and how I want Matthew in my life moving forward. Aunt Lisa has become a strong source of support through all of this. She calls me weekly to check in and has even visited me in my new apartment. She's been keeping me updated on family matters without pressuring me to get more involved. Through her, I learned that my parents have started marriage counseling to work on their own issues. Apparently, the strain of dealing with Matthew's addiction and the fallout from their treatment of me has taken a toll on their relationship. On the personal front, I've been promoted at work. It came as a surprise. I've only been there for a few months, but apparently, I impressed my superiors with my dedication and quick learning. The added responsibility is stressful, but I'm proud of my progress. The promotion came with a small raise, which has helped ease some of my financial stress. I've also started dating someone, Olivia, 23F, who I met through a coworker. She's been understanding about my family situation. I was nervous about telling her everything, afraid it might scare her off, but she's been incredibly supportive. She comes from a close-knit family herself and has been patient with my trust issues and occasional mood swings. I still have moments of doubt and sadness about how things turned out with my family. Holidays are particularly tough. Thanksgiving was hard. I ended up spending it with Olivia's family, which was nice, but also a stark reminder of what I've lost. Christmas is coming up, and I'm still not sure how I'll handle it. But overall, I'm at peace with my decisions. I'm learning that it's okay to prioritize my own well-being and that setting boundaries doesn't make me a bad person. I'm also learning that healing isn't linear. Some days are easier than others, and that's okay. As I move forward, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm open to healing family relationships, but only if it doesn't come at the cost of my own mental health and stability. For now, I'm focusing on building the life I want for myself, one day at a time. I'm proud of how far I've come, and while the future is uncertain, I feel better equipped to handle whatever comes my way.